Eala SNAPS at Aryna Sabalenka after a shocking call. You can't be serious. 1 second, it was just another point. The next chaos erupted. The line judge raised her hand, the crowd went silent, and Eala lost it. Are you kidding me? She shouted, her voice cutting through the tension like thunder. Sabalenka smirked, cool and unbothered, but her eyes said something else. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a declaration. For months, whispers had followed Eala, too emotional, too young, too raw. But that night, she decided she wouldn't swallow it anymore. When she turned toward Sabalenka and said, "Say that again," the stadium froze. Nobody knew it yet, but this was the beginning of a rivalry that would shake women's tennis to its core. It was supposed to be just another night match, the kind that starts with applause, polite smiles, and the soft thud of tennis balls echoing under the lights. Eala stepped onto the court with her usual quiet confidence, focused, determined, but holding something deeper inside. She had waited for this match for months. Aryna Sabalenka, the powerhouse, the world #1, the symbol of dominance, stood on the other side of the net, stretching, smirking, radiating the kind of energy that says, "I own this place." To the crowd, it looked like experience versus ambition. But beneath the surface, it was more than that. Eala wasn't just playing for points, she was playing for respect. She had spent the past year fighting to prove she belonged among the elite, constantly told she wasn't ready, that she was too emotional, that her passion was a weakness. Every headline reminded her, talent, yes, but raw. And tonight, she was tired of that word. Sabalenka, meanwhile, was coming off a storm of her own. After a string of tough losses and rumors of locker room tension, she had something to protect: her dominance, her image, her throne. And in that, Eala wasn't just another opponent. She was a threat to be crushed before she could rise. The first set began with thunderous serves and brutal rallies. Sabalenka's power met Eala's precision. Every shot sounded like a statement, neither one willing to blink first. The scoreboard ticked evenly, 3-3, 4-4, until the tension became almost unbearable. You could feel it in the air, thick and electric. Every point seemed to hold more weight than it should. During the changeover, Sabalenka looked across and smirked, that signature grin that had broken so many spirits before. But Eala didn't look away. For the first time, she met that gaze head-on. No fear, no hesitation. Just fire. The commentators felt it too. One of them whispered, "There's something different about Eala tonight. She's not backing down." And they were right. Something inside her had shifted. Something that couldn't be undone. As the crowd leaned in, the next point began. And that's when the moment would arrive. The one that would stop time, silence the stadium, and spark the controversy that would define the match. But that's coming next. Because just before everything exploded, there was still calm, a fragile, trembling calm before the storm. The second set had barely begun when it happened. A single rally, long, brutal, and breathtaking. 23 shots, both players chasing the lines, refusing to blink. The crowd was on its feet, gasping at every exchange. Then came the moment, the one that would ignite everything. Eala fired a forehand down the line, crisp, clean, and so precise it kissed the chalk. The crowd erupted, Sabalenka froze, and for a heartbeat everyone believed it was a winner. Then, the call, "Out!" The line judge's voice sliced through the noise like a blade. The cheers turned into confusion, then silence. Eala stopped mid-stride, her chest heaving. Her eyes darted to the mark. The ball had left a visible trace, touching the very edge of the white line. She pointed at it, disbelief flooding her face. "That's in!" she shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "That's clearly in." The chair umpire stayed still, unmoved. Sabalenka walked toward the net, raising an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smirk. "Maybe check your aim next time," she said, just loud enough for Eala to hear. It was meant as a joke, or maybe not. Either way, it was gasoline on fire. Eala's temper flared. "Are you serious right now?" she snapped, stepping closer. "That ball was in." The umpire looked down, calm and distant. "Miss Eala, the call stands." Please play. The crowd began to murmur. Phones lifted, flashes clicked. Something was unraveling, and everyone could feel it. Eala turned toward Sabalenka again. You saw it. Tell them it was in. Sabalenka shrugged, expression unreadable. Not my call, she said with a grin. That grin broke her. You can't be serious, Eala yelled, the words echoing across the stadium. The phrase, born out of pure frustration, became a spark that lit the entire arena. People in the stands gasped. Commentators went silent. Even Sabalenka looked momentarily stunned. No one had ever seen Eala this furious. The umpire issued a warning for unsportsmanlike conduct, but the crowd had already chosen sides. Half cheered for the young underdog's fire. Half booed, calling for composure. And Sabalenka? She walked back to the baseline, smiling like she'd just won something more than a point. But inside, even she felt the shift. This wasn't the same calm, disciplined Eala she'd faced before. This was someone fighting to be heard. Someone who'd snapped after too many quiet humiliations. As play resumed, Eala's energy changed completely. Every stroke was harder, every movement sharper. She was no longer playing the match. She was fighting for validation. For the right to be taken seriously, Sabalenka noticed. The rallies got shorter. The points turned into battles. At 3-2, Eala broke serve with a scream that seemed to tear through the noise. The crowd roared. The fire in her eyes was unmistakable. But just when it seemed like she'd turned it around, Sabalenka leaned on her experience. She slowed the game, disrupted the rhythm, took her time between points. And with every pause, she'd glance at Eala. That same smirk, that same taunt. The tension between them was now personal. What had started as a bad call had become a war of willpower, pride, and ego. Commentators would later say it was the most electric moment of the match, not because of the score, but because of what it revealed. A young player's breaking point, a champion's provocation, and an umpire's silence that changed everything. That call, just one word, out, became the center of a storm that would follow them long after the match was done. Because in that instant, something bigger than tennis had begun. A feud, a statement, a line drawn not on the court, but between eras. By the time the match ended, the stadium buzzed like a hornet's nest. Eala had fought until the final point, but Sabalenka's experience carried her through. The handshake was cold, a fleeting brush of fingers, eyes locked with fire and resentment. Cameras captured every frame, and within minutes, the world had seen it. Clips flooded social media before the players even reached the locker room. Eala snaps at Sabalenka. You can't be serious. The outburst that shook Dubai. The headlines were merciless. But so were the fans. On one side, Eala's supporters rallied to defend her. She's right. That ball was in. The umpire robbed her. Passion isn't disrespect. It's what tennis needs. Her fans clipped slow-motion replays of the ball mark, drawing circles around the faint chalk dust to prove their point. It wasn't just about tennis anymore. It was about justice, about a young player daring to challenge the hierarchy. But Sabalenka's defenders were just as loud. She lost control. That's not how a professional behaves. If you can't handle pressure, you don't belong here. Some even accused Eala of using drama to stay relevant, a claim that stung deeper than any loss. Meanwhile, Aryna Sabalenka broke her silence first. In her post-match presser, she smiled lightly and said, "It's tennis. Sometimes emotions take over. I've been there too, but you've got to stay composed." The comment seemed calm, even graceful, but it carried a sting. To many, it sounded like a veteran's advice. To others, it was condescension wrapped in courtesy. Eala, still red-eyed from the match, spoke later in a quieter room. "I just wanted fairness," she said softly. "I wasn't disrespecting anyone, I just couldn't stay silent." That line alone became a rallying cry across platforms. "Just wanted fairness" trended overnight. Fans turned her words into graphics, quotes, and even TikTok edits. But with every share came criticism, every defense another wave of backlash. Tennis journalists began dissecting every angle of the call. Some claimed the umpire's position made it impossible to see the ball properly. Others said the call was correct, but the reaction wasn't. And in between all the noise, both players stayed quiet, at least publicly. Behind the scenes, insiders whispered that tension between Eala and Sabalenka went beyond that one call. A stare-down during warm-ups, a sarcastic comment in the hallway days before. It all began to surface piece by piece. Maybe the call wasn't the cause. Maybe it was the spark on a pile of gasoline waiting to ignite. As hours turned into days, the moment became legend, replayed, analyzed, exaggerated. 2 words, "you can't," became a meme, a message, a movement, and as the internet argued, Eala's expression from that night, a mix of rage, disbelief, and heartbreak, began to haunt the sports conversation because everyone knew the story wasn't over. The next time these two met, it wouldn't be just another match. It would be personal. In the days that followed, silence spoke louder than any interview. Eala disappeared from public view. No press, no tweets, no statements. Just silence. But silence doesn't protect you anymore. It only gives the world time to build its own version of the story. Sports talk shows replayed her outburst on loop. Analysts picked apart every gesture, every word, every look between her and Sabalenka. They called it the meltdown, the moment she lost control, the price of immaturity. Some commentators said it would haunt her early career, while others quietly admired her fire, though few were brave enough to say it out loud. Meanwhile, Sabalenka's camp moved with precision. Her PR team crafted the narrative. Aryna was calm, professional, composed under chaos. They released polished training clips, smiling, laughing, radiating confidence. She looked unshaken, unbothered, victorious. It was a masterclass in image control, and it worked. Headlines slowly shifted. Sabalenka's composure sets example for next generation. And with every headline, Eala's silence began to feel heavier. Inside her small apartment in Madrid, Eala replayed the match 100 times. Frame by frame, she watched the ball hit the line, saw the call, heard the crowd. Every detail burned into her memory like a scar. She didn't just lose a point that night. She lost the benefit of the doubt. For the first time, she felt how cruel perception could be. Her coach tried to talk her down. "Let it go, Alex, this will pass." But she shook her head. "No, it won't," she whispered. "Not until I face her again." Because it wasn't about that one call anymore. It was about how quickly the world turned. How a moment of honesty could be twisted into arrogance. How emotion, when shown by a young woman, becomes a weapon used against her. Then came the fine. A $5,000 penalty for verbal abuse during play. It wasn't massive, but it felt like another blow. Another reminder that she'd been branded. The Federation's statement was brief. "We uphold the highest standards of conduct." But for Eala, it read like a sentence carved in stone. On social media, her followers fought back harder. They called out double standards, comparing her reaction to male players who'd done worse with fewer consequences. Clips of famous tantrums from legends, rackets smashed, umpires screamed at, flooded timelines. Yet somehow, Eala was the one called disrespectful. Then, just when the storm seemed to fade, Sabalenka posted something that reignited it all. A single photo on Instagram. A practice court. A smirk. The caption, always serious, no tags. No mention, but everyone knew exactly who it was aimed at. The comments section exploded. "She's trolling Eala." Queen behavior. Petty, but I love it. Eala saw it. She didn't comment. Didn't like it. Didn't block her. She just stared at it for a long time, her jaw tight, her pulse steady, and whispered, "Next time, let's see who's serious." That night, she returned to the court. No cameras, no crowd. Just her, a bucket of balls, and the echo of her own breathing. Each serve cracked louder than the last, each forehand cut sharper. Her coach watched from the corner, silent, knowing. This wasn't practice anymore. This was preparation. Not for another tournament, but for a reckoning, because every storm needs a calm before it hits again. And Eala's silence wasn't weakness. It was the sound of someone sharpening her revenge. Weeks passed. The internet moved on to new stories, new controversies. But for Eala, the noise never really faded. It just sank deeper into the quiet spaces of her mind. Every time she trained, she heard echoes of that night. "You can't be serious." The crowd's murmur. The umpire's indifference. Sabalenka's smirk. It replayed like a loop she couldn't escape. But pain in the right hands becomes fuel. And Eala was learning to burn quietly. Her coach noticed the transformation first. Gone were the shaky serves, the defensive rallies, the timid glances. Now every ball struck with purpose. Every motion smoother, sharper, harder. She wasn't playing to prove herself anymore. She was playing to command respect. The emotional flame that once made her volatile now became her weapon. Refined, controlled, dangerous. Then came the news that would shift everything again. A few weeks later, the tournament draw for Miami was released, and fate, almost cruelly, had decided to stage a rematch. Eala versus Aryna Sabalenka. Round of 16. The tennis world froze. Social media lit up instantly. Here we go again. Eala's revenge? Can Sabalenka stay calm under pressure? The hashtags flooded in. The internet remembered, and so did Eala. But this time she didn't post a thing. No interviews. No statements, no quotes. Just one image on her story, her racket, taped and ready, captioned. "Let's finish what we started." When match day arrived, the energy was electric. The arena pulsed with anticipation, a mix of curiosity and suspense. People wanted chaos. They wanted a rematch of emotions, an encore of anger. But Eala walked in differently. No glare, no visible tension. Just a stillness that unnerved even Sabalenka. The warm-up was quiet. Too quiet. Even Sabalenka, usually talkative, didn't speak much. Maybe she felt it too, the change in the air. Eala wasn't the same girl who shouted, "You can't be serious." She was colder now, calmer, but you could feel the storm under her skin. When play began, Eala didn't hold back. She moved with precision, anticipating Sabalenka's power, redirecting it with finesse. Every point was a statement. Controlled aggression, measured rhythm. The crowd sensed something poetic unfolding. A fight not just between players, but between versions of the same soul. At 4-3 in the second set, the moment came. A replay eerily similar to that fateful call, a ball skimming the line. The line judge hesitated, raised a hand. "Out!" Gasps filled the air. But this time Eala didn't flinch. She walked calmly to the mark, looked at it, looked at the umpire, and smiled. Challenge. The screen lit up. Ball in. Point Eala. The crowd erupted. She simply nodded, walked back to the baseline, and served an ace down the middle. No words, no drama, just dominance. Sabalenka tried to shake it off, but she could feel it. The control slipping, the rhythm gone. Eala closed the set with a calm fist pump, not even glancing at her rival. She didn't need to. The message was already delivered. I've grown, and I'm not afraid anymore. After the match, reporters swarmed her, expecting fire, emotion, maybe even a soundbite to reignite the feud. But Eala only said one line. Sometimes the best way to respond is to win. It was poetic justice, not shouted but earned. And for the first time since that night, she walked off the court smiling. The noise faded, but not completely. Even as the season rolled on, the echoes of that rivalry lingered like a shadow. Every time Eala walked onto a court, someone would whisper, "That's the girl who snapped at Sabalenka." But over time, those whispers changed. They softened. They evolved. Because after Miami, people didn't just remember the anger, they remembered the transformation. The footage of her calm challenge went viral. Fans flooded timelines with comparisons, From shouting, "You can't be serious," to proving everyone wrong with silence. They called it the evolution of emotion, the rise of a player who learned to turn fire into focus. It wasn't just a comeback. It was a message to every underestimated athlete out there. Your emotions don't make you weak, they make you human. What matters is how you use them. Sabalenka, too, felt the shift. In interviews that followed, she finally acknowledged it. "She played incredible," she said. "She earned it. I respect that." It was short, but it was enough. Because behind that respect was recognition that Eala was no longer a rookie to be dismissed, but a rival to be reckoned with. Reporters started calling it the turning point match, the moment when two different generations of women's tennis collided. One built on dominance and experience, the other forged in passion and defiance. And somewhere in between, a new chapter of the sport began. Eala's rise after that was meteoric. Semifinals, finals, sponsorships, but more importantly, belief. The world finally saw her not as too emotional, but as fearless. The girl who once shouted in frustration was now the woman who stood in control. Months later, when asked about that infamous outburst, Eala didn't shy away. She smiled and said, "That night changed me. I learned that losing control once taught me how to never lose myself again." The audience applauded, not because it was poetic, but because it was true. As for Sabalenka, their paths would cross again, and each time the crowd would hold its breath. Because rivalries like this don't end. They evolve. Every glance, every handshake, every silent nod became a story in itself. Not of hate, but of growth. Two players pushing each other to their limits, forcing each other to evolve. Years later, when fans looked back, they didn't just remember the call. They remembered the fire. They remembered the courage it took for a young woman to stand up, to shout, to break the silence that tennis so often demands. Because sometimes history isn't made in the moments of victory. It's made in the moments when someone dares to say, "Enough." And that's what Eala did. She didn't just win matches. She rewrote what it meant to compete, with passion, with pain, with purpose. Her story became more than just a controversy. It became a legacy, one born out of defiance, built on resilience, and remembered for how it made people feel. Because the truth is, the moment she snapped wasn't her downfall. It was her beginning. Every rivalry tells a story, but this one redefined what strength looks like on the court. Eala's outburst wasn't a mistake. It was a message. That emotion has power when shaped by purpose. So tell me, was this just a rivalry, or the start of a revolution in women's tennis? If you felt that story, hit subscribe, drop a comment below, and join us as we uncover more untold rivalries that shaped the game. Because in tennis, every point has a heartbeat, and every rivalry has a story worth remembering.